It was a rainy night in Cologne, Germany. The year was 1975, the place, the Cologne Opera House. The event, a sold-out concert of the world-renowned jazz pianist Keith Jarrett. The organizer of this event, a 17-year-old girl named Vera Brandes, the youngest concert promoter in Germany, perhaps the world. The concert was a late one. It was going to start at 11:30 at night. And around 8 o'clock that evening, the star of the show arrived to the empty opera house with the beaming young Vera undoubtedly at his side. Jarrett sat down to rehearse at the Bosendorfer grand piano, the one he requested, the piano that Vera had arranged for the concert hall to provide. Jarrett played a few notes. He looked at the piano. He played a few more. He looked at Vera. He stood up. This piano is unplayable. Vera Brandes recalls this tiny little Bosendorfer was completely out of tune. The black notes in the middle didn't work. The pedals stuck. It was unplayable. Apparently, there was a mix-up with the opera house staff who produced a substandard piano only used for rehearsals, and there was no way to get an appropriate piano, and Vera called everyone she could, even started arranging for a group of friends to push an adequate piano through the streets of Cologne at night in the rain, but then realized the second grand piano would never make the trip. So a jazz legend was faced with an unplayable piano. And Jarrett didn't want to perform. I mean, who could blame him? The world-famous pianist left the concert hall, which was anticipated to be filled in a short time, and he went to his car. Vera ran after him and begged him to play. The young pianist looked from his car at the bedraggled German teenager standing in the rain, and he took pity on her. He looked at her. "Never forget," he said. "Only for you, I will do it." And he played that night. Because the piano could not be played like a normal piano, what with the out-of-tune high notes and the sticking black notes in the middle, and the pedals that weren't working, Jarrett performed standing up, sitting down. He was moaning and writhing as he pummeled at this piano. He physically had to work the hardest he ever had to before. But somehow, because of the augmentations that he had to make this piano playable, the result was a deep, melodic, and trance-like performance. In the moment, that concert had to be the worst performance imaginable for Jarrett. And that concert, popularly known as the Köln concert, was actually recorded and has since sold 3.5 million copies, more than any solo jazz album in history. Jarrett was given a mess, and he made a masterpiece. I don't know about you, but life sends me messes sometimes, literally and figuratively. And honestly, I'm not okay with that. I mean, I don't mean to say that my house has to be completely tidy and perfect, but I do want it kind of tidy, and just so. But more, I want my life to follow a certain non-messy path. I want my children to bring me only non-messy emotional needs. I want my financial situation to be predictable and not messy. I want to be in control, and that means no mess. And I doubt I'm the only one. Economist Tim Harford uses the story of the unplayable piano as an introduction to his book, Messy, The Power of Disorder to Transform Our Lives. Recognizing there are people like me in abundance, Harvard uses research to explore how disorder rather than order is a bigger solicitor of creativity, innovation, and problem solving. He wonders, could it be that we might be better served by embracing a degree of messiness in our lives? Do we need to embrace a bit of the imperfect piano? It was a bright, hot summer day in Washington, D.C. The year was 1963. The place, the Lincoln Memorial on the National Mall. The event, a crowd of 250,000 at the March on Washington. The organizer, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, among others, at which Martin Luther King Jr. would give a speech. And of course, we know that speech. It's the I Have a Dream speech, and I'm not going to give the I Have a Dream speech. But some of you may have known it was not going to be the I Have a Dream speech. King, who was noted for his powerful, passionate, poetic speaking, was actually giving a very dry, meticulous presentation. There was an immense amount of pressure on King. There was time pressure, political pressure, social pressure. This wasn't something he was going to just wing. There was too much riding on it. And at about 6 or 7 minutes into this well-crafted but somewhat lifeless speech, he sees a line on the paper that he's supposed to read, and he knows it's just not going to work. That line that was not spoken was, "Now let us go back to our communities as members of the society of creative dissatisfaction." Artfully crafted, but apparently lacking soul in the moment. So he hesitates and he simply says, "Go back. Go back to Alabama. Go back to South Carolina, to Georgia. Go back to Louisiana. Go back to the slums and ghettos of our northern cities." And he pauses, likely wondering, what is he to do now that he's gone off script? Has this piano just become unplayable? And the crowd behind him on the stage knows he's not on script. Something's happening. And it is this point where you hear the encouraging voice of Mahalia Jackson cry out to him, ringing voice of support, saying, "Tell him about the dream, Martin. Tell him about the dream." And you know the rest. We have this speech because Martin Luther King Jr. allowed life to get a little messy for a moment, because he had Mahalia's voice to tell him to let go of the plan, the order, the script. He opened himself up to give it heart. It was a dark night in Bethany, in Israel, the year about 30 CE. The place, the cozy home of two sisters. The event, the dinner party of the year, Jesus and the 12 disciples. The organizer of the event, young Martha. Dear Martha. Now let me just stop here and say, I know what it is like to throw a dinner party. I know what it is like to have everything planned just so, from the hors d'oeuvres when the guests arrive, to the chocolate mousse as the evening's winding down. I know what it's like to have all the guests laughing and warm in each other's company while I run dishes back and forth, making sure things are just so, because if they aren't just so, then how will people have a good time? In the middle of making sure everything is just so, I stop and wonder, did I just turn the oven off on the souffle that hadn't finished cooking yet? Now, it's not an unplayable piano in the hands of a master or a dry script in the hands of a great orator, but I like to think of dinner parties as one of my talents, something I can craft and create. So yeah, I can handle a bit of a deflated souffle. But it goes beyond dinner parties, right? I still know what it's like to try to plan that outreach event for church and want it to go like clockwork, or to have the worship service come off just as planned, or to step up and be a voice for Christ's justice in the face of injustice in the perfect way, or to be a perfect parent, or to do all hosts of things just so. And bless Martha. Because of all the things that I want to be just so, I understand her. I don't think she wanted things to be perfect because she was a control freak. When we, like Martha, want things to be just so, I think we are saying something quite important. We are saying, I want to give it my all, my best, everything I can, because it's that important. Martha, bless you, I get it. I won't look down on you, Martha. I won't tisk at you for being busy with so many things because I know how important it is to you to show Jesus how important he is to you. We often look down on Martha. And yet, after thinking of the importance of embracing a messier life, I'm thinking about this story in a new dimension. I'm not going to dwell here on why Mary had it right and Martha had it, well, maybe not necessarily wrong, but maybe not so right. What I'm interested in at this point is seeing how Jesus came in and really just messed things up for her. Because that's what we feel when we read the scripture, isn't it? When we read the scripture, we really aren't meant to feel Mary's serenity. We are meant to feel and identify with Martha's distraction, with her frustration. And I don't even think that Jesus is trying to teach Martha a lesson, as we too often get preached to about. I think Jesus is somehow creating a messy space and inviting Martha to respond in a new way. Tim Harford suggests that people in stories like the unplayable piano or the dry speech, or as we're looking at today, the slightly critical dinner guest for the harried host, these are stories of powerful transformation. These people, he says, quote, drew magic out of the unique challenges and atmosphere of a particular moment, stepping away from structure and control, but gaining an indefinable energy as a result. We've seen again and again, he says, that real creativity, excitement, and humanity lie in the messy parts of life, not the tidy ones. And where all this creativity, excitement, and humanity are heightened, he says, is in the increased state of attention that comes from the mess. He likens it to how we are snapped to attention when we have a near accident in the car. The feeling we get isn't good. The possibility of the accident isn't good. The mess itself isn't necessarily good. But the attention it snaps us to, that's good. That's where the benefit comes in. And the heightened attention to our feelings, our reactions, the importance of life, that is where the benefit of the mess is. To me, this is how Christ works, the holy modus operandi. Into this world, God has sent something messy and crazy, a baby. Into a life of a young woman and man who didn't expect it, among a people who struggled to comprehend it, into the kitchen of a woman who was busy making sure things were perfect. And he calls them and us not to perfection, but to attention. Not passivity or acquiescence or blind following. It's not about always being still at the feet or always being active in the streets. Rather, he calls us to attention. He calls us to be present and aware so we can discern how to be more creatively, humanely a part of this world. And I believe Martha had that in her, that attention, that presence. In fact, I think that's what Jesus is recalling for her. Not to dismiss Martha's activity and uphold Mary's passivity, but to remind her to be present, to be aware of what is around her, even for a short while, to be mindful and attentive to the holy presence. For remember, we don't only hear of Mary and Martha in this story. In the Gospel of John, we see them weeping at the side of their dead brother Lazarus. And while Mary sits by his side, continuing to weep, Martha runs into the night, a woman alone, to meet Jesus, as fast as her busy feet can carry her, to tell him to come, get in the game. If he had been there, their brother would not be dead. And she proclaims him Lord of all. There's no dismissal here from Jesus, no tisking about this distracted activity. In the mess of life and death, Martha is attentive, and she is bold, and she acts. It is messy, and they all are blessed. And thanks be to God that God is willing to work with this messy existence. How many times in our biblical story do we see God wanting to step into that warm, steaming car on a rainy night, frustrated with the seemingly unplayable piano of humanity? And we come scared, anxious, brimming with mistakes and apologies. And God always returns, looking at us, saying, "For you, never forget. I'll do it for you." And God makes a masterpiece out of a mess yet again.